Hello, everyone. My name's Taylor.
Hello,
Brown.
welcome to the.
Mate,
Are
if
you
if you wanna
hosting
host-
today, Taylor?
well, you hosted last week on episode 38.
Oh, because I just know that you had a couple of weeks off there, so I just got
Yeah.
a bit comfortable in the chair, So
Yeah, I know you get comfortable in the chair. You were always telling me how much better you are. And everyone who listens to the podcast will know that we have this dynamic where we joke at each other. What they don't know is that you call me after every podcast and you go, I think you got better with your hosting skills there and this and that. But you're never self-critiquing your hosting skills. You're always giving me tips.
Yeah. Mate, well, I've got something to tell you before we start.
You wonder why the host is stuffed up. I had an introduction for Chris and you all worked out and you've just hijacked it. So anyway, you go.
Well, we've been saying Chris's name wrong. It's actually Bugden.
Bugden.
And I was on my own with Chris the other day. No, I wasn't on my own with Chris. I caught up with Chris on Saturday in a public forum. But the abuse he gave me, because I was on my own and not with you, about getting his name wrong.
Yeah.
So, mate, it's Bugden. Get it right. Do you want to start again, Taylor?
Yeah, that's fine. No, look, I know you've probably apologised in your way, Lee, which was skirting around blaming me, all that sort of stuff. But I'll apologise, Chris, looking you face to face. Sorry, mate. I'll apologise. I'll fix it from now on.
Are you going to apologise for the abuse I copped of him?
No, absolutely not. In fact, Chris, next time you're going to abuse Lee, give me a call. I'll come give you a hand.
I'll apologise for not continuing when he kept asking for more.
Anyway,
welcome. Start again, Taylor. You've messed this start up, mate.
Hello, everyone. My name's Taylor Brown. I am one of the co-hosts of Rugby League Coach Podcast. Co-hosts, see that? And we are joined today by Chris Bugden from the Sunshine Coast. He's coaching an A-grade squad up there. He's been a special guest for a couple of weeks now, which has been great to have another perspective on, other than my other co-host, Lee Addison of rugbyleaguecoach.com.au.
Hey, I've got something for the group to consider.
Thank you for putting.
I think we should bring Chris in as the third host, and he can have a week where he hosts.
Well, the beautiful thing about this is you turn.
I'm trying to get on the right side of him after he abused me.
You turn around in your chair. You have a little conversation in the corner with the boardroom, which is yourself.
Yeah.
And then once you make an executive decision, you just turn around and let us know.
What do you reckon? Do you reckon that's a good idea? Could do that, couldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Yeah, then all three of us will be arguing then.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of argument.
So next week, hosted by Chris Bugden.
There you go. Easy as that.
Okay. Are you ready? That means you got to think of the topics that we talk about and stuff, and not tell us until we're talking.
Yeah, so that we're still prepared.
And as long as me and Taylor are available, that's when we do the pod.
Right.
Okay.
And if the other boy, and we've got another announcement, haven't we, Taylor, about episode 50? Whenever we get there.
Yeah, we had a discussion midweek, and I said episode 52 because that's a year of podcasts. 52 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
But you wanted 50. I think you were the half century. I know you're a big cricket fan. You wanted to raise the bat at 50.
Well, let's ask the third wheel what he thinks.
And I refused to have 2 celebrations in a fortnight for you. So.
Let's ask the new co-presenter what he thinks.
What do you think, Chris? Will we celebrate the half ton or the 1 year?
Absolutely. I think both. I mean, you get to tip your bat at least at 50, don't you?
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's 2 votes for.
That's 2 votes. All right. So what?
I reckon that's about the middle of June, isn't it, lad?
Yeah. Well, it's another 11 weeks away from today, so 3 months. Yeah. So it'll be probably middle of June. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the podcast as we normally do now, but live. We're going to stream it live onto YouTube, which would just be another show, I guess, to the viewers that we don't script it. We don't do anything like that. No. We get together. We have a couple of topics. We get together and we just go. And we haven't figured out a location for our YouTube live yet, whether we're all going to be together, whether we're all going to be in our normal places.
We'll work it out.
There could be we could do something on location, but the things in the works.
And if it goes well, we'll do that every week.
If it goes well, we'll do that every week. So, big celebration, I guess, of some sorts coming up for the big number 50.
We'll have some guest celebrities.
I might do that, yeah.
Lee,
Taylor don't know how to get any guests on. We've never got one guest on.
No, I've never gotten a guest on. I just think that my opinions and my thoughts are authentic enough as it is, and I just go from there. Instead of bringing on celebrities, I'm just going to make myself a celebrity. I don't know how yet.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but I will.
Today's special guest, Lee Addison.
Anyway, let's continue on. Now I'm starting off, Chris. You'll be a little bit out of the loop with this one because it was a text conversation between myself and Lee on Saturday at around 6:15, and we were watching the Broncos game against the Dragons, and we both had this opinion that the Dragons would go well based on their history against the Broncos and things like that. But, we also was discussing the Broncos, and I think I'm of the opinion, I know Lee is as well, that there's a lot of fan and media talk in and around the Broncos and, whether they'll go to the next level or not. I don't believe they will. And then I started to think, well, define the next level. What is the next level? What are the markers? It's easy to say, oh, they can't go to the next level. I've thought that about Parramatta. I didn't think they could get done because I just thought they had their positions a little mungled. But what's the next level and where's that at? Because even the next level that we've seen over the past 2 years, there's been a massive shift change that in 2023, hasn't there? With Parramatta near the bottom of the ladder, Rabbitohs not going so well, Roosters bottom side of the 8, Storm outside the 8. So there's a big shift there, and what traditionally would be the markers is gone. So I thought I'd just leave this as an open forum and throw it out there for discussion. But can we have a definition? What is the next level that we're looking?
When you're ticking over in the season, you go into the season with your game plan, your pre-season, your combinations, and then you do some homework on the opposition based on the previous year or trials, and you check their combinations and where people are weak and this, that, and the other. And that sort of covers you for the first round, and then you start looking at games from the NRL of that year, that season of that year. And then by the time you're in that cycle, a team such as the Broncos or the Dolphins have gone 3-0. All of a sudden, they've gone from being teams that you might have spent 3 hours a day looking at to 5 hours a day looking at and looking for a bit more. I remember being at Penrith, and Matty Elliott and his staff were really keen to look at the way Parramatta had gone through the competition that year because they made a late run under Jared Haynes. Fantastic season, second half of his season. And they found things tactically that they wanted to inherit. And that's what happened. You get into a season and you get into the cut and thrust of a season, and then somebody somewhere works out how to beat that team. And if they've unlocked the code, the next level is covering that problem so that when the next team tries to open that code, it's a different combination. Do you get what I'm saying? So I'll just give you an example. Let's say if any team concedes more tries on their right side in defence than left side, does the coach realise this, and also does he have the players to fix that problem? So that's about the next level. That's what that means. Now, my concerns around the Broncos right now are that whenever they've been riding high, they've been fantastic for the last couple of years. They're riding high now. What's going to happen when they're under a little bit of pressure? I thought the Dragons put them under some pressure at the weekend at times, and they were found wanting. And I do wonder if St. George had scored that try in the 72nd minute rather than the Broncos, whether the Broncos might have capitulated a little bit because of the heat, the intense heat in the day. I also think as well with the Broncos that if they lose a Walsh or lose a Mam, then what have they got replacing that? I think certainly in the case of Walsh, he's in the Tommy Turbo sort of category, potentially, for the Broncos in terms of the impact he's going to have. So that's my question about the next level. Whereas a team like Penrith, a team like Roosters, a team like Melbourne traditionally, they've been in that grind so much. That's testament to the fact that they do know how to take their game to another level.
Yeah,
so that's my question about the Broncos.
Yeah, okay. And I see exactly what you're saying. And it's sort of like watching someone play chess, and once they play chess for a while, you know, when you first start learning to play chess, it's always you just put a pawn here, you do this, and you're still learning. Mm-hmm. You're doing, and once you start getting a little better, you're making moves, anticipating your opponent's moves, and then changing off that, and then doing sorts of things. So one example
in football, as in the round ball game. There was an English goalkeeper who played for Man City called Joe Hart, who was England's and City's number one for close to 2/3 of a decade. And then in one Euro tournament, the Welsh team worked out if they kicked the ball to one side of the goalpost of the goal, he couldn't dive properly that way. So then all the other coaches picked up on that, and the fall from grace of that goalkeeper I've never seen anything like it. Now, if you imagine something like that in rugby league, once coaches start working out a player can't tackle on a certain shoulder or can't step off a certain foot in attack, so if you go on the opposite shoulder in defence, he's going to struggle to break you. If that player can't adapt, it's for one of two reasons. Either the player can't adapt or the coaches can't help him adapt.
Yep.
Maybe a combination of the two. Or the coaches haven't identified it, or the player hasn't identified it. So these are the ducks and drakes that are going on in the NRL all the time. And I go back to it again. Can the Broncos go to the next level in that context? Because last year they were found wanting when they needed to. They were found wanting. When they were the front runners, they were found wanting. And I think it's a very legitimate question to ask.
I think they're going to need to go to another level. I don't think the footy they're playing at the moment is going to beat good teams in form. And I know that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron because they're at the top of the table. But and the weekend just gone, I think we've got to be careful how much we use that as a yardstick, because it was hot. There was a lot more mistakes and a lot more simple drop pill than I've seen in a lot of NRL games. To answer your question, I guess I love the question, Taylor, because it could go in so many different directions. For me, if I was to come from a coach's perspective of a community team, I've taken my team to the next level when I've developed the players and they can do things that they couldn't do last season, or they can do things mid-season that they couldn't do at the start of the season. And we're executing well, we're gelling together, and we're playing as a better team because everybody's improved that 5%, 10%, whatever it is you can get out of them. For the NRL, I think Penrith took the game to a new level over the last couple of years because of the style of footy they played. I mean, everybody wants an Isaiah Yeo in their team now. Even if they don't have one, they think they can put a 13 on someone's back and turn them into a ball player. I think the style of play that they played, not only the style of play they played with the ball, but I love their ferocity in defence, the fact that they had line speed from minute 1 to minute 79, and that to me took the game to a new level. And I don't know that other teams have got to go to another level higher to beat Penrith. It seems to me that possibly Penrith could be coming back to the field a little bit. Again, way too early to tell. But I think the Penrith of the last 2 years built upon what the Roosters and the Storm did a few years before that, because it was consistently quality football. And you know, we could use statistics, we could use record books, etc., to describe it. But there's a couple of different perspectives. I've also got a question. I don't know, we're talking about Reece Walsh a lot, and I'm not negative on the guy, but I think that he's a long way off a Tedesco or someone like that, because at the moment, yes, he's got pace, but I've only seen him out the back of shape, and I've only seen him take advantage of what's happening inside, whereas at Tedesco and even at Tommy Turbo, they start creating things as well. So
I think, I think the caveat there is the two other guys you're talking about are significantly older than Reece Walsh. Reece Walsh is still a relative baby. Teddy's 30 this year, isn't he, Taylor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, actually, I think he's already turned 30.
And what my point about him being Turbo-esque was that when you're at games, you sometimes just see players who are so fast and elusive. They're just a step above everything else. I remember seeing Tommy Turbo in the flesh for the first time in the open field and genuinely thinking it was something else. And I get that feeling from looking at Reece Walsh that when he goes, he is something else. He's got so much to add to his game. The test is whether he can add that to his game. And it goes back, we're going full circle here, really. Yeah. Can the Broncos go to the next level, Chris? Because you're right, he's not a Tedesco or a Turbo yet, but he very much could be.
Yeah.
Very much could.
Yeah. And that adds the perspective to it as well, Lee. But I'd also like to reinforce the point about if a 7 and 6 inside him, like we talked about before, if the Broncos are going to, I guess, unlock Reece Walsh and what he can do, because he's got some speed and he's got some silky skills. There's no doubt about that. I think the Broncos need to keep Adam Reynolds on the field all season for a huge part of the season. And I'm yet to be convinced that he's still got that in him. I just see him succumb to injury far too often. And that makes me – I just think that Souths would love to have kept him for another year, but there's a reason why they didn't want to keep him for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can keep Adam Reynolds on the field, they could go, well, I think he's the key to them really going well. He controls them so well for a fairly young side still. Yeah. And his kicking game, second to none. If they can keep Adam Reynolds on the field, the Broncos could go really well, but I think it's far too early to tell.
There's another direction we can take this into. If you look at, say, the top 4, Broncos, Dolphins, Sea Eagles and Warriors, 3 of those teams weren't in the top 8 last year. One of the teams didn't even exist. So the table is lopsided at the minute.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is the fact that we had a World Cup. And if you look at the likes of Penrith, Para, they had a massive contingent, but comparatively.
Roosters.
Roosters. And they were late back. And those sides who have got eyes on the prize, the grand final, it's definitely palpable. You can tell that they don't necessarily put that much focus on starting the season fantastically.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you only have to finish roughly in the top 4. Top 4, I think you have to finish in.
Yeah.
And you're in the game. So we've got that caveat too. Many of the Broncos that there was a couple of players like Payne Haas, for example, decided not to go to the World Cup. And you can tell that he's been vindicated in that, the way he started the season. So that will balance itself out as we go through the season. Should look at the odds again. I'll do that.
The other thing is, how many rounds were there last year?
24, wasn't there last year? I believe 24.
That's what I thought too. So we're actually only just starting last year's season now. It's 27 rounds. Might not be more games, but it is 27 weeks. And, we're only in week 3. So we've still got 24 to go.
Yeah, there's a long way to go, isn't there? Just before we move on to a little bit of current circumstance in the NRL and Lee obviously looking up the betting lines right now, I wanted to point out how interesting it was that other than what Chris said, which was the technicality advancement of the Panthers to play the football they played with Isaiah Yao, the way that Lee described how NRL teams go to another level and the way that you, Chris, described that community level, how those teams go to another, can up their stakes. Ideologically, it was the exact same blueprint, wasn't it? Players improving that 10%, finding where they need to improve, seeing that improvement, whether it's through coaching, even the players picking it up on themselves. It's interesting. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today is the markers that you can pick up and the stats you can tangibly look at and say, right, this is how I'm getting better. This is how I can improve. So if there is coaches out there listening to this podcast, which I believe was the target audience when I last spoke to the board, those hallmarks carry through no matter what team you're in. And I can tell you, you can say the same thing about an under sixes squad that don't keep score, because you can still take them to a new level through hallmarks of how they're passing the football, how they're taking tags, whether they're doing lead tag or how they're tackling. So those things, you don't have to be in the NRL to think about upskilling all those things and taking your players to the next level. It can happen at any level, and it all comes down to how driven you are about driving those players. So,
and it's things like completion rates, tackle count, missed tackles count. They go through everything, really, don't they? They if you can have all the X's and O's if you want, but if you're not holding the ball and you're not making your tackles, you're in some trouble. Yeah. So they're the big ones. As a coach, I've often gone into and you'll remember this from your playing days under me, mate. We analysed the rucks, so the amount of times we tackled in a certain way, whether we won the contact line, lost the contact line, whether we won the ruck, whether we lost the ruck. We looked at go forward, not whether we didn't get go forward, and basically if those offensive and defensive scores within the ruck area, whether you had the ball or didn't have the ball, if they were at a certain percentage, you knew that you tended to win a game. Yeah. Then there's of course there's always average meters per exit set, accumulated meters, this kind of thing. So there's so many markers that you can look at in rugby league, and as long as they're going in the right direction, your team is going to get there eventually, if that makes sense. As long as they keep focusing on those improvements, focus on process, outcome looks after itself, or at least it should do. So definitely. I think Redcliffe, the Dolphins are having a lot of success at the minute by tackling with their shoulders. Now, I know that sounds, hello, right? Well, most teams don't tackle with a shoulder. No, they don't. Most teams actually go into catch. Yeah. Now, one of my stats as a coach is shoulder contact, because I'm big on shoulder contact. And one of the reasons I like shoulder contact is because you can actually knock the player backwards and end up in full control of that player so that you can control how they get to the ground. Yeah. So, and I used to, as you know, under me, really hammer you if you weren't tackling with your shoulders. And I look at the Dolphins now and they tackle with their shoulders.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because my son is in the under sevens this year, so he will go through the League Safe programming in Queensland Rugby League and learn to tackle safe. Learn to tackle the right way as per the program this year. And he knows that he's tackling soon. He was chomping at the bit on the weekend, and at halftime he goes, "Can I tackle now?" I said, "No, you can't tackle yet."
Kids love it. Yeah.
And he said, because you got to get your shoulder, you get your feet nice and close, then you hit them, you duck down and you hit them with this part, Dad, the shoulder right here. That's where you got to hit them with. And we've spoken about tackling a little bit at home, not much. But I can almost guarantee you the same spiel he gave me was one of the spiels that you would have given him on a 2-day course.
That's right. That's right.
Do you know what I mean?
I think I've also heard
so they pick it up and they love it.
I've heard some stuff about what the NRL is teaching right now, and I think they're saying shoulder into the belly button. And I've got to be honest, I tend to target between elbow and hip. Yeah. With the shoulder, because I'd like to give them a bit of a wider range to target at, basically. But essentially, we're talking about tomato there, aren't we? Belly button, elbow, and hip. So it's really refreshing for me. I'm a big fan of that tackle safe program in principle. I've not studied it myself, so I don't know how effective it's been. But just listening to your testimony there, your son seems to know, and that's really good. You must feel happy as a father knowing that he's got that knowledge of how to tackle as well. I mean, then that goes into a different conversation now, whether that kind of tackle is more liable to get you concussed or whatever, But I
think it's also isn't it incredible that we started this conversation, Lee, by saying that the Dolphins are tackling with their shoulders at the NRL level. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, where did we get away from that? And I know that it's been away from it for a little while, but it's kind of incredible that's even a topic of conversation that they're. And on that note, and I don't know if now's the time to bring it up, but Kafusi 3 weeks for his tackle.
He's not even the host yet. It's gone to his head, Taylor. Is that suggesting topics we talk about? Whoa.
Well, I think it's a good segue.
I'll leave it to you. I won't say anything now. I'll call you tomorrow with some notes, Chris. That's what Lee does.
All right, we'll come back to it.
Go on. I think
good segue. Good segue, Chris.
You're right. I don't believe there was 4 weeks in it, but at the same time, the safety of the player that's passing that ball with their back turned. I mean, it could go either way. It could say you're going to turn your back into, close to the defense like that. It is what it is.
That's the way I'm going.
Should that be a suspendable sentence? I don't know. Should that be a fine? All I know is that it is an unsafe position, and the emphasis on unsafe is always put on the defender to make a safe tackle. That's always the responsibility of the man making the tackle. Comparably to other... Why?
Why? When the defender is the reactor, not the proactive participant?
Yeah, look, and I understand what you're saying as well. I don't know what a world looks like where the defender isn't responsible, and maybe
I'm not saying absolve him from responsibility. I think that was a good example of where it's gone too far. A halfback is not a protected species. All 13 players, I believe, have the same right to be tackled. I think that half could well have it. It's a fine line.
Yeah,
I think that was a Kaufusi reputation response.
Yes.
And I really think if he's a little more hesitant, then a good halfback's going to be a little more deceptive too. And if a halfback's going to turn his back on the defence, I think he cops a few sore ribs as far as I'm concerned.
Looked at it.
Not if they're late. Not if they're late. Don't get me wrong.
I looked at it and thought, he'll get off for that.
Yeah.
So did I.
But I'll also say this. Again, the whole litigation thing, anything I think that's, number one on the field, anything that's a bit, how's your father, is going to get put on report or sin-binned or sent off. And then anything that's a bit, how's your father, in the judiciary will probably get a bit more. To me, that's also a message to players in the NRL that he's got 4 weeks for that. So what would you get if you did anything worse?
There's been two other cases, hasn't there, in the opening 2 rounds? One was Suoli'i, and the other one I'm not quite sure. Yeah. The other one I'm not quite sure. The only reason why I know Suoli'i is because, the other one was Nickel Clockstad. The only reason I know those two cases is because I read about the Dolphins using those two cases as benchmarks to get Felice off. So what I'm saying is this is the most publicized judiciary meeting and issue because it's coming up to the biggest game for the Dolphins against the Broncos. This is anywhere in the rugby league world. This is the biggest game in the next week by far and wide. This is the most, that everyone's going to be watching. It's going to be a cracker. This is it's a very publicized judicial hearing because of that. So if they were ever going to make a stance, it's tonight on that, which I think, as Lee said, I think that's what they've done. I think they've made a stance to other players. Is that the right call?
I you know what crossed my mind today? I thought, has he going to the judiciary just for the drama of it and to build up in the week? Because it's almost like the weigh-in at the boxing match, isn't it?
Which I'd love to see. I'd love to see Brisbane and the Dolphins do a 1-17 face-to-face.
Yeah. But, I wondered, I thought, my conspiracy theory mind, I thought, have they made this go to the judiciary or put it on report just so that we can keep talking about the game? Because if you're planning the news for the week in the Daily Telegraph or the Courier Mail or the Herald or the Australian, that's manna from heaven, the judiciary on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Would it be different if it wasn't a playmaker? Would it be different if it was a fronty turning?
Great point.
Yeah, I believe it would, Chris.
There's probably 10 of them a game, isn't there?
That's why I have an issue with it, Taylor, because I don't believe halfbacks should be a protected species as much as Joey Johns says that they should be. They're a player on the field.
Yeah.
I agree with that. They should be protected when the ball has gone a significant distance away from their boot or hands.
Yeah.
That's when they should be protected. But again, I didn't necessarily see that in the Kaufusi in the Kafusi issue.
But the issue should be the action that the player is taking, not the number he's wearing on his back.
Mm-hmm. He's getting fired up about this, isn't he, Taylor?
Chrissy,
it's not even the Tigers.
You're
mentioning the Tigers this week.
Are you a Dolphin now? What's going
on? They're my third favourite team.
Who's your second?
You're one of those blokes that has a 1 to 17 and has it all outlined. And
no, well, my favourite team's not giving me much to celebrate at the moment, but my second is the Manly Sea Eagles at the moment.
Oh, my word.
The Eagle Rock.
What are you dressed as today? You look like you're playing netball.
Oh, I had to wear my club colours to training, mate.
All right, okay.
Only just got back.
So now that we're done with Chris's topic, can we move on to one that I?
Thanks.
So what I was going to segue
he loses
into,
control.
What I was going to segue into after we discussed the benchmark was that is round 3 too early to be talking about the makeup of the ladder and what we're seeing in some of these teams?
Yes, end of topic.
Absolutely.
If yes, which I agree with, when can we?
If
we're all having a discussion and the media saying, "Oh, they want to talk," and we're saying it's too early. So
about round 8.
When?
About round 8. Round 8. If somebody's 8 from 8, they're in the mix. If they're 7 from 8, they're in the mix. If they're 6 from 8, they're in the mix. If they're 5 from 8, they're in the mix.
Okay.
If they're 4 from 8, they are a very good chance of still making the semis. If they're 3 for 8, they best get a wriggle on. So I always say it's about 8 rounds, because what happens not long after that too is the origin period kicks in.
I was just about to bring that up. Yes. Yeah.
So, and that's the other thing to throw in.
You know, if you're, I mean, as much as we like to say Origin's picked on form, Queensland Origin probably typically is more picked on the player that's done it in the past rather than the current form. Although in the last 2 years or so, they have moved away from that model and picked the guys that are in form. And New South Wales, as much as they say they're in form, you know, you could pretty much lock down a portion of that side right now. And that portion is all coming from your Rabbitohs, your Sydney Roosters, your Melbourne Storms, all those sorts of places, which are now currently at the bottom of the ladder. Well, close to the bottom, not having much success. The Eels are there as well. They're also outside the 8. Is that origin period after a World Cup going to be one of the big... Are we going to see a team possibly have their run too late and be disrupted by the World Cup and Origin and miss the finals?
No. And I just want... Can I stay on your point about what the media are saying about round 3 and saying this and that and this and that? It is typical of the current media climate. Like they've got to make a big deal out of everything. And indicative of that, Tim Sheens is back in the game after a 10-year hiatus from the NRL. And apparently he was complaining about how the Jacko Hastings and David Clemmer issue was spun in the media. And he couldn't understand it. Well, that's because 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been spun like that. But they just got the tiniest thing and made a big deal out of it. Now, what this does, and the reason I brought it up now and brought it in here, is it influences the comp. And again, how are Brisbane going to be when they're front runners? I go back, going full circle again, because they read it. Last year, they clearly read their press. It wasn't that long ago people were saying Brisbane could win the 2022 comp.
Yes.
Right? Again, because of this media cycle. I dare say this is having an impact on St. George. They've announced, or it's come out today, that they're asking their coach to reapply for his job in 2024. Why? It's 2 rounds in. Well, 3 rounds, and they've played 2. They've won 1 game, and the other one they played really well. And there's some mitigating circumstances about the scoreline. So, and this happens in sport. Media start dictating the this, that, and the other, and that same media this week has also made a big deal of Latrell Mitchell and Tommy Turbo and how they may be the centres in Origin. So if you're Brad Fittler and you don't pick one of those 2, what are the media going to do? And then what they're going to do if you lose?
Crucify.
So they really do influence it. And to your
point... They own the game, Lee. They own the game.
They do. And to your point about selections and things like that, that is huge. if you were actually to look at every player in the NFL, if the coaches were going to go through whoever qualifies for New South Wales and Queensland and look technically at every player and what they offer and try and make a team that's the sum of its parts rather than 17 stars put together, you'd have quite a different side, I think, in some places. I did a job a few years ago, and it was a job where you played 2 games over a weekend in a carnival. 2 70-minute games in a carnival, right? And one of my approaches was that I wasn't going to pick the best players in the comp. I was going to pick the best players that I thought could get through 2 games in 48 hours.
Mm.
And that meant 2 or 3 that thought they were shoo-ins, and everybody thought they were shoo-ins in the town. I didn't pick them. And I copped a heap. But then we won the thing.
Yeah, that helps.
So, and that's my point. So that in that town is the equivalent of the media. But the media is the town on steroids.
Yes.
So if you were to pick Origin right now on form, who would you have in? You know, like,
a few Dolphins, let me tell you.
I'm not sure Mitchell would be close to it.
Latrell? He has had some really good touches, but yeah, look, you're right. Souths haven't been that on fire, so yeah. Look, I am a little bit. I wanted to ask that question because round 8. I knew you were going to say somewhere around round 8, and then Origin period coming up after that. I think your Parramatta's, who are now in some real bubble and strife, they need to start to get going already, and it's round 4 this weekend.
They're in a place where they have to go on a run. They can't win 50% of their games from now. They've got to chunk a few together. One of the reasons the Tigers, to mention them again, sorry, Chris. One of the reasons their scenario.
I was just going to ask, if the Tigers are none from 8, are they still a chance?
No. Because what's worried about their plight is that anybody who knows anything about rugby league knows that the big teams have players in the World Cup and they were on a mandatory stand down. And anybody who knows anything about rugby league knows that if you're one of the lower teams, it's better to start the next season faster and harder so that you get yourself off the bottom of the ladder and you get up the ladder and you take some pressure off yourself as a coach or whatnot. And that's what's alarming about the Tigers. And I don't have that same concern about the Dragons, and that makes the decision for it to leak or get out that Griffin's under pressure. I find that really strange. The Knights, they're probably a worrying team too. They're a team I'd worry about because they shouldn't have got beat by Redcliffe at home.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have conceded that many points to the Dolphins at home if they were better. So, and of course, their main man, their talisman, is out injured as well. So the Knights and the West Tigers are in some deep doo-doo, I think.
Well, I think it's fair to say, other than the Knights and the Tigers, you've got the Cowboys, Eels, Storm, Sharks, Raiders, and Rabbits rounding out that bottom 7. There's some fairly good footballers in that mix and some fairly good footballing sides.
Well, part of me wonders if the Sharks overachieved a bit because of their draw last year. And they went out in straight sets in the finals, if you remember, which is a warning sign.
Yes.
And the Cowboys, I was never super, super convinced by them until the last few rounds and the semis, to be honest, last year. So, again, this is the cut and thrust of the competition, though. Maybe people have had a look at the Cowboys and studied them hard and found some weaknesses. And the other thing is, people talk in rugby league. Like, honestly, secrets don't exist. Yeah. So the word will be getting around. And
did the Cowboys start a bit slow last year? I can't remember.
They lost one of the first 2. They lost to the Dogs in round 1, 4-0 or something.
Well,
And just to tie, sorry.
There you're on, mate.
I was just going to tie back what you were talking about, the Knights and the Tigers and that sort of thing, to our earlier discussion about the next level. I think one of the things, the challenges for the Tigers is they're not going to go from wooden spooners to middle of the pack in one pre-season. And because every team is going to a new level every year. And, you know, they've got some new players, but they've got a long way to catch up, I think, before they can even because everyone else is getting further ahead too. They're not stopping and waiting. I guess.
No. The Bulldogs one's an interesting one in that context.
Yeah, the Bulldogs 2 from 3 at the moment, looking good. To be fair,
Who have they got this week? The Dogs.
They are coming up against the Warriors, which will be a good game. That away
New Zealand.
In New Zealand. Which Warriors on the weekend played one of the most un-Warriors type performances you've ever seen. They had a lot of consistency, played some great football. Yes. A good Sean Johnson and a happy Sean Johnson is good for the competition.
Yep.
And, you know, they looked the real deal. They had 6 forwards run for over 100 metres. Thought Adam Fanua-Blake was outstanding for them on the weekend. Yes. They had some really good go forward in the middle. I think if they can keep that sort of form up, the Warriors they're in a good spot, aren't they?
They are, and I'd like to add Tohu Harris to your sentiment about a good and a happy Sean Johnson is good for the Warriors and good for the comp. I've got a lot of time for that Tohu Harris. I think he's toiled away for them for quite a while, and to see him get a little bit of reward, I think would be great.
Yeah, what were your concerns about the Bulldogs, Lee?
I didn't necessarily say I didn't say I had any concerns about them. I'm just not jumping on that bandwagon yet, if that makes sense.
That they're world beaters.
I'd be hesitant to give them too much credit for beating the Tigers on the weekend and getting 2 points. It was one of those games that, well, the Dogs got 2 tries out of intercepts or length of the field mistakes from the Tigers. The Tigers had, when the Bulldogs clocked off, the Tigers got back-to-back tries. I don't know that either of those teams will be threatening good sides.
Do you think the Melbourne result has been put in some context too because of what the Titans did to Melbourne?
Yeah, I think that has been put in some context. I think there's just so many injuries down for Melbourne at the moment, so many injuries and struggles there. Munster coming back this weekend is a huge inclusion. Oh, sorry. But I think Melbourne, I think there's a little bit of the secret sauce is being let out with their leadership really changing hands this year. Bromwich, Kafusi, Bromwich, losing those 3 guys straight to the Dolphins is a huge loss. And I think you're starting to see a little bit of that now.
And if you look at the pack, Tui Kamakamitha, Christian Welsh, Trent Loiero, Eliesa Katoa, Josh King, there's only 1 or 2 of those guys that would have started a game last year.
Yeah, Trent Loiero is a good player. But again, very young as well. Eliesa Katoa spent a lot of time in 9. Now obviously adapting to life in the back row full time. So yeah, there's a few things in and around that pack that's definitely still learning and on the up. So it does put that win into context, Lee. You're right. And I watched that round 1 against Manly and I was so impressed with Manly that day and Turbo. And I was thinking, how Manly are just 10 times different football side when Turbo's in the mix and when he's on. And I remember watching him just going, if Turbo's on like this most weeks, they'll be in the top 4. With Cherry Evans. Cherry Evans scored a hat-trick that day. Once you get a little bit more threat with Trebojevic, who was just taking hit-ups out of his own end and really making he was making a mockery out of front rowers. He was taking hit-ups as a fullback out of his own end and making 20 metres. And I was going, this bloke's just sensational. It can't be touched. And I'm thinking, if Turbo can do this every second week and Cherry Evans can do this every second week, Manly are in the top 4.
Cherry's playing really well at the moment.
He really is. He's playing a great brand of football. Some seasons he'd be lucky to get 3 tries. He's had 3 in the first game.
Can I go through my odds or what?
Oh, yeah. You want to go through the competition odds?
Yeah.
Is there any chance you could pull up any fluctuation over the last 3 rounds? Does it give you that?
No.
A history?
No.
You're on the wrong betting sites, mate.
Panthers $4.20 favourites.
Really?
Second, the Chuck, $6. Third, the Rabbits, $7.50.
Fourth, the Dolphins.
Fourth, Brisbane Broncos, $8.50.
Wow.
That one shocks me.
Mm.
Dolphins are paying $26. Sea Eagles, $15.
That's a good little punt.
If the Broncos are $8.50, yeah. Warriors, $46. Titans, $41. Bulldogs, $31. Dragons, $81. Raiders, $23.
That seems a bit high. I mean, low, sorry.
Low, yeah, a bit
Low,
short.
yeah.
I was just about to say that. Sharks, $13.
I think the only real bargain buy there at the moment is the Seagulls.
Knights, 101. Cowboys, 17. Ooh.
Might be throwing a tenner on them.
Eels, 31. West
31?
Tigers, yeah.
Wow.
West
Eels,
Tigers,
$31.
West Tigers, 101.
So the Tigers and the Knights sitting at $101 each.
Yeah.
Tough, that. Very tough.
I think last time I looked at it, the Tigers were suspended.
No more bets. Oh, it's an unfair market anyway. It's just the house taking money off you.
Yeah.
That's the old Christmas bonus for everyone at Sportsbet. Oh, all right, gentlemen. Well, this feels like a bit of a natural end, does it not? Does anyone anything they want to get off their chest?
I think
can be about my hosting skills, can be about my control of the podcast. It doesn't have to be about rugby league.
I think I got my gripe off earlier.
Yes. Bugden will never be changed again, unless our other mate from the UK comes on.
Yeah.
Just say Bugden.
Bugden.
Well, as I told Lee when he visited the fine area that I live in at the moment, it is an English name, so I expected better from him.
Yeah. Okay. Anything funny? Any stories about a camp or something you did during the weekly, or about some coaching you're doing at the moment, or any stories? Give us something.
I think.
First school holidays coming up. You'll be getting pretty busy there.
Oh yeah, but mate, I'm covering some meters at the minute.
Yeah,
covered more meters than my playing days. That's for sure. They're driving everywhere.
Well, you would have done that when you walked out the front door, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm driving everywhere, lad. I've got no tales for you, really. I do know that you should put the poles in your pole bag down rather than leave the point up.
Right, okay.
It puts an hole in your bag.
Oh, no.
Oh,
no.
I'm so busy because I'm doing Queensland League scene as well. Let's plug that.
Yes, yeah, Queensland League scene is back.
Chris will be eyeing that off soon as well.
Season 2023.
I'm waiting for it to come back.
It's back. Episode 1 dropped last week. We'll have obviously episode 2 coming up this week. Lee Addison will be reviewing the Central Queensland Capras.
Yeah, man.
The undefeated Central Queensland Capras so far.
Yeah.
It's only been 2 rounds.
Yeah.
But,
the Mackay Cutters ladies, they had a close one the other day.
Did they?
Yeah.
Someone's been watching your analysis.
You never know.
You never know.
I thought Lee might have been reviewing the commentary skills of the Q Cup commentators on Sunday.
Well, I'm getting.
If you're talking about him, I can tell you exactly what they're like. I've been next to him. It's hard to get a word in.
I put it on, and I thought, geez, I know that voice.
Yeah.
He gives me a cheat sheet at the start. You can shove that where the sun don't shine. I'm just natural, Chris.
When he commentated his first game with me, I was obviously doing play-by-play, and Lee come on as colour, and I gave him a sheet of paper just with a few tips for the first time you've commentated, and then a space underneath where you can write down notes and all that sort of stuff. And it's something when I commentate in the Brisbane Rugby League, often I'll do play-by-play. So if any of the clubs throw a commentator at me for the day. So it's just a quick cheat sheet, nothing too crazy. And I gave it to Lee. I said, oh, mate, it's a little cheat sheet. And he put it in one hand, straight in the other, and then gave it back to me. And said, you're right, lad. Said, okay. And I'll see how this is going to go. And then pretty much the first time you get in the opposition territory, and that's the only time you got to be quiet so I can actually call the play for the highlights. And Lee's already on a 2-minute rant about why this happened 2 minutes ago because there was a drop ball. And I'm going, oh, that's good. Yeah, no, I'm on again this weekend. I'm doing Dolphins versus the Bears in the Host Plus Cup.
Here's a question for you, lad. Are the Dolphins Q Cup club a different club to the Dolphins NRL club?
Yes.
Do you know that for a fact?
Yes.
I think they have to be.
They're a completely separate entity.
Yeah, I think they have to be a separate legal entity.
Yes.
So, if you play well in the Q Cup side,
yes.
How do you move up to the NRL team?
Well,
they're a feeder club. They're
a feeder club, just like Tigers and the Falcons are a feeder to the Storm.
Yeah. I was going to say, because you'd have to be registered with both, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you even have to. You'll see, there'd be players at the Tigers that aren't registered to the Storm, but if they could be picked up at any time, really.
But then you'd have to be registered to the Storm.
There'd have to be some on the field. Yeah. There'd be some sort of process, I guess, once that gets executed. But so they are different entities. Obviously, the Dolphins NRL and then the Redcliffe Dolphins are still a Host Plus Cup side, and same as Hastings, Deering, and Colts.
How are Redcliffe going in the Q Cup? I've not.
So they only played 6 minutes in round one, and then they had severe storms and had to cancel the game.
Oh, it's my kind of game. I used to like playing in them.
Yeah. So they cancelled the game after about 6 minutes. And then so they shared the points that week with East. And then they had a draw with the North Devils on Sunday.
So sharing points everywhere.
Yeah. So they've got 2 competition points and they haven't lost and they haven't won. So but yeah, it was the game on the weekend against the North Devils. I wouldn't say their best performance. They've got a very, very good side. If they gel together and click, they'll play some really good football, I think.
Are they a stronger team in the Q Cup than last year, do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They've got a really good back line. Robert Jennings on Trey Fuller at fullback still. Robert Jennings on one
Coach
wing.
Rob.
Yeah, he can absolutely play football.
Mm-hmm.
They have Braden McGrady, who was the winger for North Devils last year. He's on a train trial with the Dolphins NRL. He's on one wing. Valence Tafari in the centres. Jack Bostock, the Illawarra junior that signed with the Dolphins. He's the other. So yeah, they've got a great.
Is he related to a fella who was at St. Greg's?
Jack Bostock. Don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so. But yeah, so they've got a really good football side. Dynamis Louis is one of the front rowers. So yeah, really good football side. I think they'll go
Albert Kelly in the halves.
Albert Kelly in the halves. Jackson Fry on an edge.
Taylor Brown in reserve.
Yeah, well, the amount of running I did on Sunday morning at Max's under sevens football game, I walked.
Are you still a coach?
No, I'm not the coach anymore.
You've been sacked
due to work commitments. I can't commit to being there every week. So I sort of sacked myself. But in saying that, I've been to the trainings and I've been to the games and offering my assistance wherever I can.
I hate
Did you get a
people
payout?
like you.
What'd you say, Lee?
I hate people like that. I'll give up the coaching job, but I'll still interfere.
I didn't interfere, and I walked straight up to the coach, introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, if you need anything, here's my number. Give me a call. I'll do anything you want."
Yeah.
Just
by the way, 3 in for a compress your defence.
Mate, there's no compressing defence in the under sevens. Let me tell you, it's up, go, and that's
it's hard work keeping them in a line.
It's fair income, hard work keeping them in a line. And a lot of kids in his side are new this year, so trying to teach them that they have to pass from dummy half. They just get to dummy half. They've got the ball and they're thinking, why am I passing it? Just off they go. So yeah, look, I was the touch judge up and down the sideline. I took my job far too seriously.
Were you flag?
I was racing the other touchy after every try.
When you get touch judge courses, I witnessed one as a teacher. You know them exaggerated movements with flag?
Yeah.
They actually have to do them. It's not just like elaborate ploys from the individuals. You have to flirt your flag in a certain way, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I like it.
And so it goes like that when you know.
I still think one of the best things about rugby league is that you can go to a football match and you could be cheering on a team with a bunch of mates and they could be losing by 40. but you could still find entertainment in just watching the touch judge. And every time they're racing against a bloke and they're like, ooh.
Did you have to change your style of running, Taylor? There's a particular style of running for a touch judge.
Mate, I have one style, and that's the only style that doesn't give me chafe. And that's
because of the size of his Chaminda pass. His Chaminda Vars, sorry. He has to stand. He can't stand just off the line. He has to give himself fair.
It has to be fair
removal from the line.
Yeah.
So that there's no girth going over the line.
Mate,
they have to move the red line that the crowd isn't allowed and the bench is not allowed to step over? Do they have to move that wider?
Push it back, push it back a little bit. Mate, I didn't know I was touch judging, and I got there and I ran to get some water bottles and some tags and make sure everything was good. And I sat down to have my coffee, and I had 2 or 3 sips of my coffee, and then I'm like, oh, can you do the touch judge? So now I'm touch judging. I've just had a coffee, so I'm sweating deluxe. It's about 37 degrees. The heat from the ground is just sensational. Oh, mate, it was a sight to see. Let me tell you, I wasn't gonna go home and shower. I had to go home and shower before I went and commentated because I was that bad. I was drenched. I couldn't sit in a room with someone and
Dad,
talk about
will you
footy.
come and watch me this weekend? No.
Yeah. I'll be in the car with the aircon on. Oh, very good. All right, gentlemen. I think that's about it.
Toodle pip.
Toodle pip. See you lads.
Next week, Dad.
Cheers.
Bye.